Hello and welcome to Miniature Adventures. I'm Big Lee, and this week I want to ask, where do you buy your books? So this is a question that came up ages and ages ago. It was just sort of like a passing comment from someone, and I'm afraid I didn't get their name to be able to credit them, but it's sort of a subscriber's questions from way back. And at the time I thought, well, I've sort of covered this subject before, but I was thinking about it again, because from the point of view of when I'm filming this tomorrow, which will be your yesterday, YouTube time travel, wibbly wobbly and all that, I'm going to Saffron Walden. There's some excellent bookshops around there, and in particular a really good second-hand bookshop. An Oxfam one, it's a charity shop basically, and I always end up coming out there with at least a couple of books, sometimes many more, and on many notable occasions I've ended up coming out there with several cut price Osprey books that have led me down little rabbit holes in the hobby, and others that I've kept and thought, that'll come in handy one day, and I'm sure it will. But the point is I buy my books in the same way that everyone else and all of you probably do. I go online, I buy from the usual publishers, I get them online, Amazon, other bookstores, second hand from like World of Books and companies like that. Sometimes I can get them on eBay. But actually, and I'm sure I've mentioned this in previous videos, so apologies if I'm sort of covering the ground again, but I highly recommend finding some really good charity shops that have a proper collection of books, because you will almost inevitably end up finding all sorts of inspirational books in those shops at a fraction of the price. Now I have to say, it is a particular bugbear of mine. Right, you go into a charity shop and it looks like I've got a reasonably large book collection. So you go down there and one of two things happens, and I always end up leaving the shop muttering under my breath. Either the books are in absolutely no order, shelf after shelf, all mixed up, no one has even bothered to sort them into category. That annoys the hell out of me. I've seen it doesn't often happen, but I've seen it on enough occasions that are just sort of like, why? I'm interested in one particular subject, at the very least try and categorise them a little bit. So that winds me up. That's personal bugbear. The other one that is perhaps more surprising and a little bit more annoying to the history buff in me is to go into a shop and find that everything's nicely catalogued and it's all in the right order, and you go look up and down, it's like, where's this? There's no history books in here. It's like this town doesn't have history. How can a shop with a reasonable collection of second-hand books not have any history books at all? And in actually talking to some shop owners, sometimes they've actually decided we don't sell many of that type of books, so they collect them up and send them to other branches where they would sell that type of books. But as the random punter walking through the door, while my wife is wandering around looking at everything else, at least give me a few history books for me to peruse and consider buying. When there's none there because they've all been shipped off to another store, it does make me, inside of me withers a little bit, because I'm just thinking like, why am I in here? Me and my wife do like to explore new towns. We go out for a drive, we'll go and do a little bit of shopping, hunt down some books in some second-hand bookstores and some charity shop stores, and then we'll go and have a bit of lunch. Treat ourselves, a little trip out, a little bit of shopping. My wife realises, and to a certain degree appreciates the fact that I have my limit, maximum of 2 hours. By that point, my knees and my feet are hurting. We both get a little bit of we end up coming home with a little pile of books each. She's usually got a huge pile of cookery books, which is her personal collection, and I might have one or two history books. But the point is, we've had a little peruse, we haven't spent a lot of money, we've come home with some new reading material, and we get a lunch out of it and a bit of time together. But if I end up going up and down a row of shops and a dozen different charity shops and I come out of there with no books, then that's a very sad day for me. And that does occasionally happen, unfortunately. However, what I would say is that when you find a good bookshop, one that does have a reasonable collection, and more importantly, history books, it's worth visiting them time and again. I say this because, as I say, yesterday for you, I'm going to be going off to Saffron Walden, and I say there's an Oxfam bookshop there. Always end up getting a really good collection of books in there. I say I've bought Ospreys, all sorts in there, and I'm actually really looking forward to tomorrow. There's a little game shop round the corner which I will peruse. I always end up going in there. A couple of other stores, a couple of other charity shops in the local area that also have a reasonable collection of books. I were almost guaranteed to come home from our little trip out, like I say, hour and a half maybe maximum going around the shops, so we don't spend a long time there. There's a market on tomorrow, do a little bit of shopping. Hopefully we'll all come home with a few books, and then we'll go off and have a bit of lunch together. That's my idea of a gentle day when we haven't got a museum or an exhibition or an event to go to. If we want to get ourselves out and about and occupied, go and hunt down some books in a charity shop. And as I say, it's a worthwhile source. I've come across some amazing collections. I mean, I would say probably a third of the books in my room here are from charity shop finds. Sometimes I'll find something bang on the nose for the subject that I'm doing now, or an old period that I've worked on. I'll find a new book. Sometimes I just collect something because it looks interesting and it ends up being useful down the line. So for instance, I got a book on French Foreign Legion uniforms. I bought that 4 or 5 years ago, but I did the Foreign Legion last year. I thought, oh, I know, I've got a book for that. Oh yeah, there it is, I found it. And I'd collected it because I thought I want to do this one day, and lo and behold, I did. So, the long-winded answer to that very simple question, where do I buy my books? For about a third of the time, it's from charity shops and second-hand bookshops, provided they're not too expensive. I mean, I do draw the line at spending more than the original marked price on a second-hand book. But I mean, if you shop around and you're not worried about nipping in a charity bookshop or a thrift shop, you can usually find some bargains. And I wholeheartedly recommend it as a way of just finding some new and random subjects, something to spark the imagination, maybe get the creative juices flowing, and perhaps send you off down a tangent, perhaps starting off a new period. You never know. Also, as an addendum to this, I'd also say there's a couple of really good second-hand booksellers that attend a lot of the shows that I go to. They're always worth a peruse. They have some really interesting collections. Tend to be a little bit more expensive than the charity shop, thrift shop type things, but you can find some really excellent books. So while a third of the books, as I say, that I've got here are probably from charity shops and second-hand bookshops of one kind or another, another third is probably bought at shows from these second-hand retailers, the likes of Dave Lanchester Books and so on, Cavalier Books, and other companies that I've picked up at shows. And the rest, the other third, is probably almost certainly books that I've picked up at off of online from. So we're talking like purchased from Amazon because I've had something specific in mind. Or one of these online second-hand bookshop sellers like Able Books or Welder Books and all that. There are loads of companies like that. Again, another really excellent source. Always worth, if you're looking for a book on the big A, Amazon, always check out if there's a second-hand copy that's available, because 95% of the times when I've bought books like that, the quality of the book that I get is pretty good. It's not brand new, obviously it's second hand, but usually the descriptions are very accurate. If they say a book's in good condition, it usually is. There's usually, depending on the retailer, some a returns policy that you should be aware of, and you can get it for a fraction of the price. Even when you factor in postage, you can still pick up a really good book for £2 or £3 sometimes. So again, another option there. And I'm sure many of you have done exactly the same. But if you haven't, worthwhile having a look. So definitely recommend going down the route of online second-hand booksellers and the charity/thrift shops that you might get in any high street. That's it, a little bit of a ramble as usual this week. I hope you found it interesting. I'd love to hear from you where you find your books. Where would you say you predominantly buy your reference books from? And do you, like me, hunt down random books and keep them and go, that'll be useful one day? Or do you only ever buy for the project you're working on at the time? And is your proportions about the same? A third from charity thrift shops, second-hand bookshops, a third from online, and perhaps a third from the booksellers that you might meet at a trade show, for instance. That's my proportions. I wondered what yours are like. So I'd love to hear from you, as always, in the comments below. So if you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe and share. And of course, if you want to keep up to date with weekly content from this channel, please tap the bell notification icon. So until next week, look after yourself, keep gaming, keep buying as many books as you can get away with, of course, and of course, keep rolling high.